Hey guys, this is Raymond, and you are watching RPadTV 3000. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. We have a special episode where I'm going to be talking about 5 reasons why Iron Eagle is the better 80s airplane movie than Top Gun. Now, to give you some background, a few weeks ago I was on Threads and saw this post from Retro Rewind 80s who was joking about how, Top Gun and Iron Eagle came out around the same year, in the same year, both 1986, around the same time, both the summer season. And he jokingly said Iron Eagle is better because it spawned 3 sequels, whereas Top Gun, it took decades and decades to finally get to Top Gun Maverick. But I firmly believe that Iron Eagle is the better movie from a certain point of view, if you want to go all Obi-Wan Kenobi. Now, there are a few reasons for this. I mean, Top Gun to me, it was something that my white friends enjoyed, like Grease, cool, but definitely not for me. Whereas Iron Eagle, it was in heavy rotation on cable stations. It's a movie that I've watched dozens and dozens of times. It's up there with Big Trouble in Little China, The Last Dragon, as movies that really defined my youth. So really, this was a big deal for me. And I want to talk about 5 reasons why it's just a better movie. Now let's check it out. Starting with the soundtrack. The Iron Eagle soundtrack has Queen, Twisted Sister, King Cobra, Dio, James Brown, George Clinton, Tina Turner, and a whole lot more. Now, some people will say, yeah, but Top Gun had Danger Zone by Kenny Loggins and that song by Berlin that got heavy rotation. Now, let's be serious. Kenny Loggins is a great guy to get if you're doing movie music, but any member of Queen would just kick his ass and just much more talented. I mean, same goes for most of these bands. And Berlin, those guys are one-hit wonders. So I firmly believe that Iron Eagle definitely had a vastly superior soundtrack. Agree? Disagree? Please leave a comment in the comments section. Now, piggybacking on that, this is not a point, but it is something that my excellent friend Todd Northcutt mentioned, that how Iron Eagle made it cool to have a Walkman strapped to your leg, which is something Doug Masters did in Iron Eagle. But it wasn't a Sony Walkman. It was an Iowa Walkman. For people not familiar with that brand, Iowa was like, it's what you bought when you couldn't afford Sony, because Sony was pretty expensive back then, and Iowa was not. Years later, I would find out that Iowa was actually purchased by Sony and was actually owned 55% or so of that company throughout the 80s. So I guess that got all the crap products there. Now, reason number 2 of why Iron Eagle is the better 80s airplane movie. It had the more powerful death. Chappie Sinclair died. I'm doing air quotes that you can't see right now if you're just listening, or because this graphic is blocking you. Now, his death to me was more impactful than Goose's death. A lot of people will disagree with that, but I think they're silly. What was Goose really? He's just a sidekick. He wasn't as good at volleyball or being an airplane fighter than Tom Cruise. He can get another sidekick at any time. Chappie, on the other hand, he was Doug Masters' mentor. He was the father figure. He guided him, gave him wisdom. That's a tough act to replace. And let's face it, Louis Gossett Jr. is simply a better actor. Now, getting into reason number 3 of why Iron Eagle is the better 80s airplane movie than Top Gun. Jason Gedrick's feathered hair. Look at this. I mean, this is ridiculous how immense this hair is. Other people tried to do it. Ralph Macchio had that thing going on. Never as good as this. And rumor has it that Jason Gedrick's hair was inspirational to Richie Sambora, the guitar player for Bon Jovi, and Richie copied his hair. Whether or not that's true, I'm going to believe that. So that is reason number 3. Moving on to reason number 4. Iron Eagle had the better supporting cast. Ooh. Carlos has a comment saying Lou Gossett was great in Digstown. Lou Gossett was great in Digstown and many other things. In the 80s, he had An Officer and a Gentleman. He had Enemy Mine. Both phenomenal movies. So totally agree with you, Carlos. Now look at this photo here. This young African-American man is Larry B. Scott. Not only was he a supporting character in Iron Eagle, but he was also in Revenge of the Nerds, Karate Kid, Space Camp, a bunch of movies that were definitive for 80s kids. While the guy next to him, in between him and Doug Masters, that is Styles from Teen Wolf. And Teen Wolf was one of the biggest movies in the 80s. So yeah, I know this is a tougher argument, but if you look at it in the context of the 80s, I believe that Iron Eagle had the better supporting cast. And this one was tough because Val Kilmer was the man in the 80s, you know, between Top Secret and Real Genius. You did not get cooler than Val Kilmer. Some people brought up Tim Robbins, but I really think the 90s was more his decade. Now for the 80s, I'm going to go with the supporting cast. I mean, look at these two supporting actors here. Revenge of the Nerds, Space Camp, Karate Kid, Teen Wolf. And if you add in the love interest played by Melora Hardin, you know, that's just an incredible cast right there. Some of you might remember Melora Hardin from The Office, 17 Again, the Hannah Montana movies. So this cast was surprisingly stacked. And last but not least, Iron Eagle was Goonies with airplanes. You know, Top Gun was clearly an adult movie, more based in realism. Whereas Iron Eagle, it was about a bunch of kids that somehow were able to steal plans and schematics from the United States Air Force. Completely ridiculous, but as a kid, I totally bought into that kids could do this, and it was cool watching kids have these kinds of adventures. So it was something that kids in the 80s could identify with more easily than what was going on in Top Gun. Carlos asks, who was the sloth in Iron Eagle? I don't know. I will go with Milo. He was their computer nerd. He could be their sloth and duke it out. I don't know. That makes sense to me. Now, of course, I want to know what you guys think. Do you agree that Iron Eagle was the better 80s airplane movie than Top Gun? Ooh. Nate is here. He asks, or was Goonies Iron Eagle with pirate ships? That is something that will stump philosophers from decades to come. Carlos says Milo would be Data. Yeah, that actually makes more sense, but they didn't really have a sloth in Iron Eagle, I guess, did they? But then again, Goonies didn't really have a Chappie, and nobody really died in Goonies because Goonies never say die. Hey, Goonies never say die, and Iron Eagle never say die. Haha, it's more alike than I even thought. Totally meta there. So guys, I was supposed to be joined today by my good friend John Foster, excellent dark fiction author. He is not feeling well today, so I hope he can make a quick recovery. Please visit his site at johnfosterfiction.com. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Please subscribe. All my socials are down there. I'm pretty much on all of those these days, except Twitch. Totally gave up on Twitch, not my thing. And we have some great shows coming up next week. We're going to talk with my friend Joey, who is a big tech writer in Asia. He recently moved to Malaysia. We're going to talk about Web3, his experience as a Filipino moving to Malaysia, and our love for Blackpink. We're also going to talk with Matthew Freeman, Excellent playwright out of New York. Also one of the biggest, if not the biggest, Star Wars nerd I've ever met in my life. We're going to do a preview of the Ahsoka series. And those episodes will be longer. This one is a quick one. A bunch of changes had to be made to accommodate losing my guest. But I hope you buy my 5 reasons of why Iron Eagle is better than Top Gun. Agree, disagree, please leave a comment. Please share this video with any children of the 80s you might know. And I will see you next week. Wednesday and Thursday will be live, God willing. And thanks for watching RPadTV.